Good morning, everyone. My name's Lauren Simpson, and I'm with the SBDC. I am joined this morning with the fabulous Lori Williams. Good morning, Lori.
Lauren, hello.
Good to see you. I love that purple on you. It's gorgeous.
I needed something bright and colorful this morning, and purple's a power color. So
here we go.
Powerful audience, and I'm representing them today.
Awesome. We also have a special treat. We are also joined today by our incredible colleague, Miss Sadie. Hi, Sadie. Thank you.
Hey. A little too excited.
Not at all. Not for this audience. We're all ready for it.
Okay, cool.
So just a quick little tidbit. Sadie's going to be taking over for me for the remainder of the show. I'm going to do the intro and then she'll finish it off for me. So you guys treat her good, like I know you will. Let me go ahead and start my screen share so I can dive into a quick introduction as to who we are, what we're doing here, and then I'll hand it back over to Lori and Sadie. And so again, my name is Lauren Simpson. I'm with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We are a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country. That means regardless of whatever city you might be in this nation, you should be able to get connected with a SBDC office. And you'll want to do so because we offer no-cost services to local small businesses. No cost because your tax dollars are at work. So your tax dollars have already taken care of the fees. You might as well partake in our resources. For the Los Angeles network, which is the network that I represent, we have locations or centers, in the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And you can see those represented here on the map in front of you. Here's a deeper dive into what it is that we do. We offer no-cost business advising. And so you can get an appointment with our guru of all things numbers, Ms. Lori Williams, as well as other business experts in marketing, in business planning, in, again, finances. So anything your business might need, we have resources for you. We also offer virtual trainings, much like the training you are partaking in today. So go ahead and get in contact with us if you haven't already. For the Los Angeles area, you can contact us at 866-588-7232 or online, smallbizla.org/new client. For those of you who have had the treat to reach out to us outside of the LA network, be sure to reach out to americassbdc.com/find-your-SBDC. And then finally, I wanted to let everyone know about the California Dream Fund. It's a program providing micro grants up to $10,000 to seed small businesses, new small businesses. So you must be a brand new small business to qualify. But go ahead and check out our landing page, smallbizla.org/dream fund. We have FAQs on that page, and so you'll be able to get any questions answered, and the registration is open. So be sure to hop on the link that I put into the chat and, get registered. Good morning, Emma. I see you in the chat. And so with that quick housekeeping, be sure to put all questions into the Q&A. Again, questions into the Q&A. And then the chat will be reserved for any links and resources that Sadie or myself might provide to you via our guest, Ariel, or Miss Lori Williams. So Lori, with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Wonderful. And thank you, Lauren. And we'll see you next week. And Sadie, thank you so much for being here to help out on this. So guys, we got a great show this morning, and I have to say, I just love when I look in the chat real quickly and I see all our frequent flyers here saying good morning. It just warms my heart. I have to mention that right away. Now, Lauren's going to put some of the links I'm about to announce. You know how she said tax dollars at work, you might as well use these services? Well, that's going to be my beginning topic of the tidbits for today, because guess what's right around the corner? Tax deadlines. Okay, so I've got a few tidbits, and like always, they're very lengthy links to the IRS website, so I'm just giving you a heads up here. It's going to be in the chat so you can get it from there. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about, Oh, sorry, I got one thing I'm going to bring up really quick. This is only for a few people probably in the audience that's dealing with an EIDL reconsideration, asking for additional funding. You might get asked to fill out a schedule of liabilities. Getting a lot of questions on this, so I wanted to throw this in real quick. What is happening, guys, is unlike when the first loans went out, when you're asking for additional money, they are doing far more underwriting, meaning they're asking for more financial information from you. And I see almost every client's been asked to fill out such a form. What they're doing is they're wanting to understand what is it you owe and what is you own. That's assets and liabilities. What do you owe and what do you own? Now, I've had some questions when it's a sole prop, is it the business or personal? They're still looking at the business. So just put your business liabilities and what the business owns. The other thing I wanted to tell you real quick, this last column's very confusing to most. I understand because it's in bank speak. How secured? People are like, what does how secured mean? What this really is saying is this secured by something? So if you borrow money and you maybe have a loan out, you may have used your home for equity, for collateral. So it would be secured by the home. For a credit card, it's unsecured. So it would be not secured for the answer to that. But they're literally asking, did you pledge an asset to secure this loan? And they look at whether or not your assets are already pledged. So that's what how secured means. Quick shout out on that because it's been causing a lot of confusion to many. Okay, so here's my quick IRS stuff. Like I said, it's in the chat. The IRS does send out these newsletters. I'm an enrolled agent, so I get access to all these newsletters. They do have great information, so I kind of watch what I'm getting in my email, and I pick out things to share with everybody. So we're going to start out with first, if you can't pay your IRS bill. Not a good spot to be in, not a comfortable spot to be in. There are certain payment plans. I'm not going to say they're ideal, guys, but sometimes you're back against the wall. You have to do something. So this and the additional link that's going in the chat gives you all of the options from the IRS perspective of what you have if you can't pay the tax bill, okay? Now, this is something new I seen the IRS put out. A lot of people ask me, how much should I withhold? So what they have now is this tax withholding estimator. So basically you can finish your tax return and then you can put some information in this and it gives you a suggested amount. It's an online tool, a suggested amount of how much withholding you should take for the following year. I'm assuming this is going to be on the heavy side. They're going to want you to withhold more because they don't like you owing them. So, look at the number, understand the number. I haven't run it a lot, so I can't make a lot of statements. I just want to give this as an additional tool for you guys to use. Now, the next one is, once again, just a few people on this call, if any, but I want to throw this in there. There's always these questions on whether it's a real business or a hobby business, and hobby businesses have different types of tax treatments. So I saw this and I wanted to include it because it's kind of cool. They have this list. Guys, it's only 3 I put in so it would fit in the slide. It's a long list, okay? Look in the chat for the whole list. But you can look through these items and see if it qualifies as a business or a hobby business because it has different tax treatments. And sometimes actually SBDC clients come and it's really just still a hobby business. They're making something, selling it to friends and family or, et cetera. So there's the checklist that demystifies whether it's a hobby business or not. Okay, now I want to tell you about some upcoming shows. So next week, I'm having a special session. It's one of the Ask Lori sessions where I talk about what you, the audience, wants to talk about, okay? I answer specific questions, but I'm going to have a focus on it. As you know, for the frequent flyers that have been with us for 2 weeks, and this week is included in a series I've been doing. The series is a real look into marketing for your company, sales and marketing. We talked about digital marketing 2 weeks ago. We talked about bringing clients to our website last week. Today, we're going to get into strategies. So I've really focused on how to increase your customer base. And this following week, what I'm going to talk about is let's bring marketing and finance together, because not often enough are they put together in a mindset and a financial calculation for small businesses. You know, people say, well, what should your marketing budget be? And we talked about that a bit with Stuart last week. It's got to be based on finance, because you can't spend money you don't have, right? So you got to know, how much money can I have to invest in marketing? And then you don't invest it and just, well, hope and prayer it's going to work. You need to have a way to calculate back, what does the sales need to increase to in order to pay and benefit from the marketing? So it's putting a quality check on the marketing you're doing to make sure it's working. So next week, we're going to talk about that, plus anything you want to discuss. Now, Lauren always gives you the link, and it's in the chat, where you can respond to any question or conversation you want to have next week. I'm going to make it a little bit easier. Now, you guys know that I only monitor the question and answer, the Q&A, for the session I'm engaged in at the time. But if you have something you want me to address next week, and you got it on your mind right now, put it in the chat. But I'm asking you guys, put a special little key that says next week, so Sadie knows it's not a question that should have been put in the Q&A for today. So if you've got something on your mind and you don't have time to do the link later, or you want to announce it right now, put it in the chat, put next week. I view the chat several days later. I'll see it before next week. But the other guest that we're going to have is the following week. Really cool small company starting out. It's been in business for a bit, and Leanna, which is a client of mine from the SBDC, she started with a really good financial plan. So we're going to have her come talk about that. Once again, getting marketing and finance together. Then I know I promised a food truck forever. The food truck's finally coming. Okay, guys, I know there's been some people on the show that's like, when's the food truck, Lori? Okay, here's the great announcement. The food truck is the owner of Brew Rings. If you're around the LA area, you may have tasted this great food. So Stefano is going to be our guest. He's going to tell you everything you want to know and don't want to know about setting up a food truck business, and a lot of tidbits that really apply to all companies. And then after that, we're going to have a special guest. Abby is the owner of Zizia, and this is a company that creates herbal products. And like many of our other guests, she started from this scratch and is still in the process of experiencing wholesale, retail, online. I don't care, guys, if you're selling a product, a service, or what you're selling. She has a ton of experience on what works and does not work, and she's going to share that with you. So I've got finally a little bit more organized, where I'm announcing what the guests are in advance. So we've got some great upcoming shows, but let's get back to today. Today is really exciting. Like I said, we've been working on focusing on the marketing. And I started with social media with Deborah, and then we talked about website marketing with Stuart. Now, you hear me say all the time, I'm addicted to the word strategy. You know, I believe that everything should have some strategy you engage in. Just doing things one-off here and there is not effective. You know, all companies, especially ones that get to a certain size, they look at the big picture. They have plans, they have goals. Small businesses tend to not. So when I found that Ariel, which is a fellow advisor at the SBDC, I'm telling you that straight up, guys. So his information is in the chat, so you can reach him. When I found that out that he was going to come on the show and was willing to tell his story, I was excited. I was excited about it, because here's one of the things that he wrote to me, and this makes a lot of sense. I said, hey, what would you like to talk about? Tell me about the conversation. He said, whether it's working within the community, starting my own ventures, or consulting for new or established businesses, I optimize the strength of the team to find solutions, create value opportunities, and think outside the box. Now that's strategy. Ario, welcome to the show.
How are you?
You know what? You're talking my tune. You know, everybody on the show knows my favorite word's profitability, okay? And anything that leads to profitability, I'm in. You know, I'm in. And you know what? I always tell the people in marketing and sales and everything, you got to do your job so those cool little numbers get on my financial statements. Without you, I can't get them on the financial statements. So here, tell me more about that sentence I read. What do you do for clients? What is your focus and approach?
I mean, absolutely. Thank you for having me. First of all, I appreciate all you guys and everybody attending this. Marketing, I mean, like you, Lori, marketing is such a broad terminology, right? Mm-hmm. And strategy is kind of sometimes a difficult word to deal with when it stresses people out when they deal with the financials and they look at what their product or service is doing and how they're going to do it. So for me, I always like to say the word roadmap, so it's not as, scary. But, one of the things I've learned over the years is the strategy, the definition to me is the intelligent allocation of insufficient funds, right?
Okay, Sadie, intelligent allocation of
insufficient funds.
Insufficient funds. That is great. You got to write that one down, Sadie. I love it because everybody has insufficient funds that they have to intelligently allocate. Okay, I'm already in. Keep talking.
So being marketing is such a broad terminology. When I say marketing, it's like car, what kind of car? Marketing, is it web platform? Is it creative? Is it activation? Is it social platforms? Whatever it is. So for me, when I look at marketing, I work with my clients, I always look at it from three perspectives. The three perspectives you look at is your community development or your community. You look at your web platform, how you're playing in these worlds, and your print platform. And nowadays, print might be on the smaller side of the spend, but it's still very relevant in certain sectors, depending on who your audience is. So when I look at those three categories and how we spend strategically these funds, you have to kind of break it down into subcategories, right? For me, creativity is a big thing. When you think of creativity, thinking outside of the box, how are you going to differentiate yourself from your competitors or your competitive set? How do you know what's already out there and how are you going to be that much more different or take what's already out there to the next level, right? Because one of the things that I've learned in this, and a little bit background and history for me, I come from probably the surf skate culture brands. We come from we call it the action sports sector. So you're talking about a culture that started as a backyard hobby like surfing and skateboarding, but it's been able to project itself to be a national brand competing with the big brands. So I worked for Vans. So for Vans, we were just a small surf shoe for skaters, right? Now the brand is like competing with the Nikes, the Adidas and all that, because they were very strategic in how they did things. So working for them allowed me to think creatively outside of the box and making sure that we understood who we're speaking to. Because one of the things in thinking creatively is anybody can think creatively. The question is can you think creatively within your sector and who you're speaking to? So with that,
that makes complete, I'm just going to add to your creativity, and this is coming from old MBA school. Okay. So years ago, there was a story that we always used to talk about being creative, and it stuck with me forever. There was a tuna fish company that had major market share. And by the way, guys, I don't know if the story's true or not, but it's still a great story. Okay. So there's this tuna fish company that has major market share, and it starts losing it to a brand new competitor. And the brand new competitor, their tuna has a little bit of a pink tone. And so they hire an advertising agency, and the advertising agency did one headline. They said, the old company, they said, guaranteed to not turn pink. Of course, that changed things immediately. So what I've learned over that, because my humble beginnings, believe it or not, were in advertising, is that you can do the smallest thing that can make the biggest difference. So I just want to say, I don't hear in the small companies creativity used as much as you do in the larger campaigns in the big company. And I think that's a lost word. So you've already brought another great word. And, speaking of Vance, one of the private companies I had was a big skateboard company, became very popular. And one of the things they did that I thought was so interesting is they had influencers. They found the coolest guy into an area they were going to put a store, right? They found the coolest guy. They went into the local skate shop. They found the cool guy that was skating in the local place, right? Yeah. They got in front of him and said, here's the deal. You wear our clothes, you use our skate for free. And they had him do that. And then they moved the store in their area. And they said, once the influencer, everybody wanted to be like them, then they come in the store and buy. So once again, creativity and outdoors had to bring those two stories in because they were great. Keep going. I love what you're doing.
Wow. I mean, you just led into my next conversation. My next bullet point would be audience, right? you know, your influencer was the person that influenced that local market, which allowed them to bring something retail to the environment. And it's an audience, right? Because the brand knew that if they spent money on this influencer, then they would get more eyes on it. And they were what they call core to the market, meaning they were speaking that skate language. So for me, whatever sector business you're in, whether it's service or product, you have to speak that language to that audience. Meaning, one of the misnomers in marketing is, oh, we're just going to do Facebook ads because I bake cookies. That's vegan. Okay, that doesn't work to me because I'll be like, okay, my first question is, who is your audience? You know, you have to drum it down to like the vegan, the community, the culture, understanding the culture, what brands are working with there, and then speak that language. Because if you're talking baking terminology and you're not speaking vegan terminology, the vegan community is not going to be able to adhere to this. So you have to be attuned to your audience, and you have to not speak in a broader term. You have to speak very directly, because in the end, when you speak to an audience, the audience that bounded to your brand becomes your ambassador. Like the influencer, right? Yep. He's a cool kid that skates. He influences these new kids, and vice versa. Those new kids get good, get better and better. It's like a target, like a target, right? You hit the middle, and then you start marketing outside, and then it gets bigger, 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 and bigger, because the influence gets bigger. Because if you speak to a direct audience, and you speak that language, then what happens is they become the ambassadors, and the ambassadors become ambassadors, and that's how you're getting brand awareness. And you're not wasting any money, because obviously in marketing, spending money on one influencer that can move a market is amazing, but sometimes you have to spend on 5 influencers that can move market in a couple of different directions. Does that make sense? So it's one of those things.
It does. And, you know, I think it also goes back to what you were saying about insufficient funds. People gravitate immediately towards Facebook. It's easy. I do this, but it doesn't give the outcomes in many cases. You know, going to your example of baking and vegan cookies, right? I always say, look for co-marketing opportunities based on behaviors. Like, so you can, I'm making this up off the top of my head, but somebody who is worried about this type of eating may also be somebody that's involved in yoga studios, right? Yep. So you go to a yoga studio and say, hey, can I have free cookies, you know, provided to you? Or can I put a brochure about my cookies, and I'll keep a brochure about your yoga or online, what have you. So my point is, when you start thinking like you're speaking, creative, what's your audience, influencers, you can do these activities that cost very little money, that are more targeted towards that person, and build your customer base. So I love it where you're going, and it creates a presence. It creates a presence that you won't have if you're just hanging out there on Facebook. So you're making complete sense, and I seen it in my own world for, you know, how many years of consulting.
I feel like you have my notes right now, Lori, because you just led into my next bullet points is presence, right? You know, presence is a big thing in marketing, because, you know, when you have presence, whether it's co-oping or collaborating, it's you're collaborating with a company or a brand that sees it the way you sees it, and you're allowed to get that much more eyes on the brand. So presence is huge, you know, always being there, making sure you're right. Like if you're baking, you're not going to be at the Home Depot, you know, trade show. You're going to be at the baking trade show, right? So it's very presence, and being very, what I say very is endemic to that culture, is being present in that culture and getting involved. Because the more you get involved, like for the bakers, you get more involved in that vegan culture, you're just going to get more information. You're going to get more ideas. You're going to get a solid audience. You're going to get more creativity, and you're going to be able to allow your brand to flourish, because you're consistently across the board being activated, you know, whether it's through the people or other brands.
You know, it's interesting. And I know, guys, I've told you this story so many times, you're probably sick in the audience of it, but it's such a good point. And Ariel's mentioning again, going on presence, Ariel. So this goes back many years ago when I was really building my consulting business, and I was playing the whole LA scene, right? I was walking into, and I don't think I ever told the audience the background on this, but here I am in like a grocery store, and somebody has a little stand giving away cookie samples, right? And I'm watching, they give away a cookie sample, and then a cookie goes in, you know, cookie box goes in the grocery shopping cart. And I'm like going, oh my God, I wish I had samples, but I can't because I'm a consultant. And then my little brain said, wait a minute. I don't sell words. I sell intellect. Where is my sample of intellect? So fast forward my entire career for, high level consulting, turnaround consulting. I did this. I would call business associations, the LA Chamber, all these business associations. What do they want? They wanted speakers to come to their events. I was a free speaker at all the business organizations, and I would demonstrate my intellect. I gave away free samples of intellect at the speech, right? And then, of course, I'd have clients wanting me to apply the intellect, the sample, to them. And so my point is, what Ario's talking about as a presence is something you can do so easily. And it's not just about a product company, it's a service company as well. And then I took this whole concept, I did writing, now it's blogs, you can give away free things on YouTube. I mean, you can take what I did in an on-site presence, right, to any platform now. But the more you can be present in front and demonstrate what you do, the more you can create it. Now, one of the things that I know is, and I had to be consistent. I had to make sure I did this activity, then I did this activity. I couldn't do an activity and then not do anything for how long. So continue on where you're going, but I understand the presence personally.
Yeah, I mean, along with presence, there has to be consistency, right? You have to be consistent. You just can't advertise on Facebook once and expect. I mean, one of the biggest things in marketing is, I advertised in Facebook and Instagram and I did print ads and I got nothing back, right? The ROI is it's just know in marketing, the return on investment on marketing is, you have to look at it from a different angle versus a financial angle, because it's one of those things that being consistent is going to cost money, but the return is something what we call being stale. Being stale in an industry is good because they know your brand is there, right? Like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Vans, Nike, it's always there. It's always there because they're consistent. It's always, oh yeah, it's only Nike. It's one of those things where it's always there. But, if you're here now, gone tomorrow, it's hard because that's where you have to kind of financially figure out, like, how can I be consistent? But again, be creative with your audience in your presence in being consistent. Maybe it's just going to be at the baking event. You're being at all the fairs, twice a year for the next 3 years, right? To get your brand out. So that's being consistent within that sector, and people will always know you're there. The part what people struggle with is spreading themselves thin. They want to be everywhere at once, and then they're gone here. They're here today and gone tomorrow. And sometimes that doesn't make any sense because you're going to be that brand that flashes by and you don't have a plan. You don't have a strategy. You don't have a roadmap. You have to kind of break it down to its basics,
We had a guest a couple weeks ago. Her name was Yvette, and she had a fashion product, right? And she told us about all the benefits from the pop-ups, the local pop-ups that she was going to, and built her audience. And we had another guest talk about pop-ups. And so here, once again, is a way to have a presence through these pop-ups. They weren't cheap, but they weren't outrageously expensive. And you could, commit to the whole day on being someplace. And they were all building an audience through that. Now, something you said, Ario, and let's unpack this a little bit. I'm in agreement with you, but I want to unpack it for a couple more layers. Yes, it's correct that it's really hard to say, okay, I went here today and then I have this financial ROI that happens. When that happens, it's friggin' great. Like if I would go to an event and I'd speak and I'd get a good client, we had Stuart talking about how he did a blog and he got a client, a big, huge client right after. So those wins do happen, right? But they don't always connect. So here's the way I want to word it and have you comment on it and then change it because it's my words as will. Yes, it's true that it doesn't always lead to immediate, but it does need to lead to it eventually. The numbers have to show up for a financial advantage, and you have to at least be conscious of this. And where I'm going, Ario, is I've been forcing every one of our guests about marketing to talk about just don't do it without looking to see if you're getting the results. Have a stopgap that you're going to check things. You're going to make sure. So just with that huge thing I just said, can you run with it a little bit and give me your thoughts on what I said?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much, like obviously sometimes the financial doesn't come in, but I mean, when you put those stopgaps in or you put those ceilings in, you put those checkpoints in, it's one of those things where whether it's, you have to look at the whatever platform or whatever media you're using to market and kind of make realistic goals. Like, for example, maybe you spend ads on Instagram and you want to get 10,000 followers. Like 10,000 followers in 2 weeks is not going to happen. you know, but like maybe if you get 500 the first month and then you start working, you start engaging in direct messaging and you have engaging conversation, your network keeps expanding through there. So it's putting realistic goals that are really realistic in front of you to make it happen. And I'd rather see, like what I always work with my clients is I'd like to see smaller wins versus big wins and then retract. So if you do small wins, small wins, small wins, small wins, and you look back at your smaller wins, then it's a bigger win, right? You know, I mean, those one hit wonders on Instagram where these brands take off and they sold 10 million in one day. Those there's a lot of work that goes beyond that. It's not just an overnight success. There are overnight successes, but I'd say 99.9% of the time, there's a lot of work that goes into like a lot of these big things that happen. So it's putting realistic goals, you know, and not overextending yourself.
Yeah. I agree. You know, I always tell everybody that one hit wonders, you know, have you ever read, you know, an article in the Rolling Stones or something where that somebody says, you came out of nowhere and the band was like, hello, no, you don't know how dives we've been playing in for friggin' 20 years. You know, they're almost insulted by that. So I tell everybody, you know, these one hit wonders are not, you know, media loves to play on them. They like to boast on them, but they're really not true. And, you know, I look at the financials. I see companies that are well-known brand, not, you know, big companies, but people say, I see this everywhere. And I look at their numbers. They can't even buy a quart of milk. You know, they don't have the financials in play. I love what you're saying about having these goals. And another word that you used in a communication is you said defining objectives. So I want to walk back and unpack that as well. I'm assuming, Ariel, you're not saying you it happens and then you go, I hit a goal. You're saying you sit down, you think about this, you maybe even write it on a piece of paper. So let's give a little you know, training to our guests. If I said to you, hey, I want to sell X, what would you tell me? You would say, get a goal, and would I write it down, or I would just say, I'm going to do this? What would you instruct me to make it tangible?
I'd say I'd write the goal. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. We love animals on this show. My cat jumped in.
Perfect. Sorry. So, you know, it's always write a goal down, right? And then you have to work backwards and see what's realistic for that goal. So if it's going to be followers or whatever it may be, you have to figure out there's not one formula, and everybody's marketing, because their creativity and their audience is always going to be different. You know, maybe it's something like, if I'm the baker, I want to get 5 customers and have them become brand ambassadors, meaning like have them sell for me. So you have to take what it is, cut it in half, and figure out how you're going to get there. And there's no right answer and there's no wrong answer on how you're going to get there. The question is if you're going to get there, right? So when you want to define the objective, so if it's getting your brand, the baking brand to retail, okay, to get to retail, I'm going to have to go to how many events, or I got to go to wholesalers, and you have to figure it out. Like it's tough to give the perfect answer, but get the goal, cut it in half and find out what's realistic, then cut that half and make something that's attainable. Because one of the biggest things in marketing is you grind and you hustle so hard and it feels like it never ends, because you don't set these small markers for yourself to get to a point where he's like, okay, I got here. What's the next thing? But see, when you get to that first goal or that first objective, you have to analyze what's happening there, because that could be the next trajectory of your brand. Meaning, okay, the people liked it, but my marketing is horrible. Okay, let's talk to the people and say, how should I market this? Maybe it's not through Instagram. Maybe it's through print. You know, I need to pass out flyers because these people talk through flyers. So you have to, every goal has to be, you have to come back and review and figure out what the next move is, because going to the end and assuming it's going to be one move in one way is not going to happen in marketing. Because marketing, you have to be super agile, because, you know, as you guys all know here, you have to be agile, you have to be quick to think, and you have to be able to move. And just know, marketing your brand, unless you're, I mean, to me personally, you can never market the wrong way if you're passionate and you love it and if you're emotionally attached to it. Selling the brand, like, which is my last point today, is going back to defining objectives, is storytelling. I would tell everybody, stop selling your product or service. You need to start storytelling about it. You know?
That's great. You know, Aria, you said not the perfect answer, but you actually answered it perfectly. I'm going to tell you why, and I want to point out some things that the audience maybe picked up or not. While you were answering that, you were saying things like, you have to figure it out. You have to take these little actions. You got to see where you're getting. And that's really the crux of this. You know, too often entrepreneurs have been sold this, you know, bill of goods that's incorrect. Yeah. It kind of says you just got to be passionate and you go do it, you see what happens, and it's not true. Nothing, you know, I always say, when I don't know who actually said this, I'm sure somebody before me, so I don't mean to get credit for it by now, but success leaves clues. There's clues along the way. And whether you're selling at a flea market or you're selling in your Coca-Cola, you have to be so strategic. You have to think things through. And that's what I have been trying. And thank you so much. I've been trying to really get to our audience here, is the very, very important part of being strategic, thinking it, analyzing. You know, a couple weeks ago, guys, you might remember when Deborah was on, she pointed out something I never talk about, but NLP, that was on my resume. And I know you guys were really excited to hear more about it, and I kind of let it go. But I'm going to tell you something that is an NLP therapy that actually applies to marketing. So here it is. There's 4 ways to succeed in life. Okay. 4 ways. The first, and this is made for something else, but it applies. You must know your outcome. What do you want to achieve? Know your outcome. Number 2, take massive action. Go after your outcome. Whatever goal it is, go after it. Here's 3. It's really important. See if you're getting the results. If you don't, change your approach. Those are the 4 ways of succeeding according to NLP in life, but it's also about marketing. And Ariel, that's what you were basically saying. You were saying, you know, figure out your goals, figure out what you're trying to achieve. And you also said about little pieces, they call it chunk it down, little tiny chunks to see. Because what I see is people do the experiment of marketing with the outcome over here. And then when the information changes along the way, they don't change your approach. You've got your approach. Now, I loved what you said about storytelling. That was really what I always did with my intellect. I stood up in a crowd and I told stories of how I helped companies, right? But another part that you said that I'd like to emphasize, and I think this is where you were coming with your team, you know, me going in and doing turnarounds as the CFO, I would talk sales and marketing just because I needed the financials to get better, right? But what I would talk a lot, whether the company consisted of 1 owner or 10 owners or 20 employees, or sometimes these were huge companies, I would go in and I'd say, make every person internally a salesperson and communicate that to your vendors. Have a consistent line you use to describe your company. Describe it to vendors. Ask your vendors if they know anybody else that might buy it. Ask your clients. Ask everybody. Be an internal sales, but be consistent in your messaging. And you talked a little bit in our communication about team building and getting everybody on the same team. And I think you were kind of referring to what I'm saying here. Yeah. So I'm going to pass the buck back to you to give us some insight on that.
Absolutely. And what's one of the biggest strengths of a brand is your brand ambassadors, or they call them soldiers, or the people that love your brand. Because when you start looking at how your brand gets to the next level, it's, you know, as a small business owner, you know, previously, and having small brands, you know, it wasn't my circle of friends I made money off of. It was the friends of friends of friends I made money off, because my friends became my ambassadors. So when you talk about internally being a sales team, yeah, you have to sell it consistently all the time. But at the same time, you have to convince the people, because if someone is being attracted to your brand, whether they're buying a product or a service, they are engaged. They're emotionally tied to the brand because there's a reason why. You know, like they buying the baked goods because it's vegan and they're vegan, and your brand means something to them because you see things the way they do. You look at life the way they do. You live your life the way they do, and they're attached to that. And they'll be the first one that's going to be to tell your story. It's kind of like going to a really good mechanic, right? You go to a really good car mechanic, he takes care of you. You don't have to worry about anything, and he's not going to burn you. You're going to go back to the mechanic. It's like the brand. It's like that, having the brand ambassadors or that internal sales team that turns everybody else into to the sales force. You know, that's huge in this, because your message, for one, is getting out. 2, you're listening to your audience. If that internal core sales team or people or ambassadors are your audience, they're the ones that are they have the boots on the ground that's listening to what's going on. So you as a brand can come back and refocus on the group and be agile and figure out, okay, this is working, this is not working. Now, instead of you being the focus group, now you have a team to be a focus group. So you have to be very, again, I'm gonna use the word agile. You have to think creatively. And sometimes when you're able to get people to be engaged in something bigger than them, they're gonna put forth more effort in that, which is your brand, because they believe in it.
You know, I'm going to bring up an old thing that you don't hear talked about as much, and I think you're going to know what I'm referring to, and that's the elevator pitch. And the reason why I'm going to bring it up is I have sometimes where I meet people and I ask them what their company does, and they go on, and at the end I walk away and I think, I have no idea what their company does. They just went on and on. And when this was especially something that I would do when I was a professor of entrepreneurship at USC and Pepperdine, because they were so excited and they wanted to be super cool in their language about it. And one time I told somebody, I just have a private client that has a brand new scientific invention in something I don't even understand. He can give me 2 sentences and I know what he does. You just have an online website and I have no clue what you just said. So the importance of having a message, whether it's in print, it's online, it's in cells, whatever, that is easy to understand, which we used to refer to as the elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Can you tell people about the importance of what the elevator pitch was?
Oh my gosh, the elevator pitch. That's you're in the elevator, you got 30 seconds to sell this big time investor, and you got three sentences to say it, and that's where I think I've changed that word for me personally, the elevator pitch, to storytelling. Tell them about your brand. And then if they engage with you in that elevator for that 30 seconds, then you've hooked somebody on the line and you can have a deeper conversation. But elevator pitch, I think, is still very relevant, Matt, because they're going to ask you who you are and what you do, who, what, why, and when. That's what you are as a brand, and how, so I think, the elevator pitch, the storytelling, it's all creative approaches. I mean, that's what storytelling is, right? It's basically the elevator pitch turned into a different use of words or a different light, because when you storytell about whatever you do, it's completely different than selling it, right? Because selling it, you feel like just being pounded, buy. But when you're storytelling it, you're like, hey, the approach is a little bit more softer and more conversational, So going back to the elevator pitch, yeah, I remember sitting in these marketing classes and it was like, wow, we got 30 seconds. And it was so stressful to come up with one sentence. But once you start feeling it, and again, your elevator pitch or your story piece will change over time as you get more comfortable. So again, being agile, being very directed to who you're speaking to, because if you're speaking to an investor, you're not going to be talking about the small potatoes you're dealing with in the company. You're going to talk about the big overarching message, right? So it's again, knowing your audience, if you're,
it's so true. I changed mine so many times over the years. When I was in my younger years, I think I was, you get a little bit insecure and you want to show your intellect when you're selling it. So I was very engaged in describing myself in a really smart way. But of course, people didn't know what in the world I was talking about, right? So eventually over the years, I started getting to the point where I understood I needed to be more basic. And in fact, I had my big turnaround consulting firm and I was asked to go on a radio show. This is decades ago again, right? And they wanted me to, present some kind of branding name. And I didn't want to have my big consulting firm because that was really seen as a big consulting firm, right? So I thought, well, I've written some books, I'm going to create a division anyway. And that's where the name Business Simply Put came from. And what's interesting is where it came from is I had a client at the time that used to call the words I would say, the sentences I would tell her, she called them Loriisms. And she had all these sticky notes on her computer of all these things I advised her on, right? And she said one day to me, she goes, it's just not confusing. You make business, really simply put. And that's where I got it from. I was like, well, this is how my customer sees me, right? And then I started saying, well, my expertise is in tax, finance, and legal structures, and small businesses are very confused by this, so I answer their questions. It was so Well, I was like, well, I have this degree in this. I was like, well, yeah, they're confused and they ask a question about it and I answer it, you know? So where I'm going with this, Ariel, from my live examples is to really make sure when you're storytelling, you don't go from inside what you perceive, but what the audience perceives. And we talked about that a little bit last week. Can you extrapolate on how we can get the audience to get out of their own head and get into what their customers think about them and not tell their story in the way they see it only?
Yeah, that's always a tough one. You know, sometimes, like myself, proven, you get very pigeon-headed and be like, this is the way it's going to be. But, you know, it's having conversations, you know, talk to your immediate circles, talk to your focus group, talk to your sales team, your ambassadors, and ask them what's going on out there. Because unless you're that person that's having these conversations and talking to 20 people, but the tough part is it's like a leader. You have to take the consensus of what everybody's thinking and be able to lead, right? And be able to lead in a correct way, like in marketing for your brand and storytelling. To make sure you're talking to your audience correctly, you have to do some research and data, and your ambassadors, the people that are ones selling the brand or the service for you, can tell you what's going on. They like this, they don't like this. And that's where you have to, again, be agile and be able to creatively think and like, how are we going to message these people based on this information, right? So there's no right or wrong answer. I think it's the connection that you want, because once you have a connection, then you have the sale. So going back to that part of the storytelling part, it's to get it out of yourself is you have to have conversations. And sometimes you don't want to hear it. You know, it's like my wife. I don't want to hear what she has to tell me all the time. I'm like, man, you know, really? But, you know, it's another perspective and it's so hard, you know, but you have to be humble and understand that to have a successful business, it's the humility of failing and how fast you get up again. And the failure could be not the business going kaput, could be like, oh my God, I failed because I see it this way. My wife sees it somewhere, or my business partner or my friends see it this way. I don't see it that way, but let me understand it from their perspective. So it's humility. You have to have humility because humility makes you stronger, you know, and you have to be hungry. You have to be humble and hungry and grind and understand that people think being an entrepreneur. When I left corporate America, I thought being an entrepreneur is going to be amazing. I get to surf every day, pick up my daughter, take her to swim practice. No one told me that I was going to work 24/7, 7 hours a day and love it. You know, but I was, whoa. But yes, as an entrepreneur, you can turn it off. But when you turn it off, when you come back, it's going to be the load's going to be that much heavier. Yep. Not like corporate America, are like, okay, I'm going in Monday, Friday, get my weekends off. But gosh, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, you have to be humble. And I use that word humility a lot because you don't want to hear it. And it's okay not to hear it. It's okay. But the question is how fast, like for me personally, how fast was I able to process with the humility, meaning, oh, I don't like that answer.
Yeah.
Or it's like, you know what, you're right.
I love what you're saying, because I think sometimes, you know, and I totally get this, everybody. I've been there, and I've been there with other people. You want to have this succeed so much, you have a level of fear. And so people overcome the fear with this belief and passion, and they try to be so passionate that they steamroll and they miss the humility, and they don't listen to any outside influences. So I love what you're doing is you're bringing it back home. Let's take some of that passion and let it get us out of bed in the morning, but then let's tamper it so we have an awareness of everything that's going on. And I have to laugh. I have so many times people say, I want to be an entrepreneur so I can work for myself, so I can have more control over my business. Like, well, hello in your time. And I especially heard that as a professor with the young students. Well, we want to, you know, I want to travel and all that. And I go, oh, then don't be an entrepreneur, become a corporate. Okay, Ariel, here's like the test. You know how they call it like rapid fire, where they put somebody on the line? I'm not intending to, but rapid fire came up. So we got a question, and this is a person that has a specific type of company, and they're saying just, how do you build this? So this is one where, you know, we're going to see, you know, I'm asking you to be agile, just the first words that come to the mind, but this is the actual question for you. Okay, I was giving you the warning of it. So we have a question that says, can you speak on what an artist can do to connect with their audience, or just advise on how to build an art business? I think that's an interesting question. Can you take it and give us any insight on that?
Absolutely. So as an artist, you should know where you want to be. Do you want, I mean, like, know that for yourself as an artist. Like, Do you want to have showrooms? Do you want to build pieces for companies? You have to figure that part out. Once you figure that part out, or do you want to be just a revel artist, like, and have people pay you? I mean, obviously pay you to paint or be artistic for them, you know? So if you know where you want to be, then you work backwards, because knowing your goal will get you to find out who that audience is. So I don't know what type of artist you are, but what I do know is whatever your, like, I guess, artistry direction you're going in to push your art, you have to get engaged in that community. Know the community you want to be part of. Like if you want to be this reveled artist and you want to sell your pieces to be in museums, then you have to understand the museum sector. You have to understand, you know, the showroom sector. You have to understand the people. You have to understand how they think when they buy these art pieces. You have to think of these circles, these networking circles that they're part of. And you have to get part of those circles, because that's the only way that people are going to see you. I mean, again, the one-hit wonders, the days of doing art and somebody spotting you, it's tough. It's not easy. You have to work. And then those one-hit wonders, there was work behind that. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah. You know, it's far and few between. So as an artist, depending on the direction you're going into, like set a goal for yourself. I want to have an art show. And in this art show, these are the people I want to invite. I want to invite the people at the museums. I want to invite the curators. I want to invite my local artisans in the area. And I want to collaborate, because if we collaborate together, we can get our message out bigger, you know? And then knowing that if you're going to have an art show and an event, don't get me wrong, it's amazing event to have and kind of revel in, I'm here. But when you have all those people at your event or you're connecting, you have to connect. That's when the real work starts. You have 100 people in there, you need to sell 100 people right there, then on the spot, on who you are as an artist, as a brander for your brand and or your art collections or whatever it may be. That's the work. You got them there. So think of like this. You have an event, you're bringing people to you, you get to sell it all at once versus going to visit 100 people one by one. So just know that events isn't just a party when you're the one that's trying to get to the next level. It's work for you. You have to get in there. So as an artist, know where you want to be. If you don't have a clue, it's okay, you know, because maybe you don't know what your direction is, and just keep doing what you're doing. But what's going to happen, you're going to start to connect with people that understand it the way you do and start building on that. Build those blocks. If you're like, here, I could be talking out loud, but if you're in graffiti, a graffiti artist, okay, you gravitate towards the graffiti culture, then you get engaged in the graffiti community. You do give backs to the community in graffiti. And then now you start meeting the big graffiti artists, like the big ones and the big ones and it keeps rolling over. Then you get tied in, then you have collaborative work. Now you're doing a piece on a wall with a big time artist. Now someone's going to commission you to do something at their business. So you have to kind of know which way you want to go and be agile, because sometimes it's not going to want to work for you. But if you have to do a piece for free, pro bono, but it's going to get you to this networking circle, you might want to consider that, because when you look at long-term business as an artist or any person in business, for me personally, I like long-term business versus short-term business, you know? And it's one of those things as an artist, which is, it's not easy, but I know a lot of artists that have done very well for themselves because they were able to stay humble, stay hungry, keep their nose to the grind, and was able to make stepping stones. They didn't go big out of the gate. They didn't do a big mural on the biggest building at downtown LA. What they did is they did small pieces, built relationships, got engaged in the culture. They knew who their audience was. They were consistent in their branding because they were always around. And they saw, okay, when I look at like my community development and how I'm activated as an artist in the artist community. They know me. You know, my web platform, I have presence in my web platform, and print. Maybe print could be just business cards or just being around. So those are the things I would look into, you know.
Very, very sound advice. And you know what it keeps coming back to, and what I love is the roadmap that you discussed at the end. If you say, I want to drive to New York, you first identify where in New York you want to drive to. I'm just cross country since it's California. And then you look at the map to find the details of how to get there.
Yeah.
I always will tell people, imagine where you want to be, and then imagine what you had to do to get there, and then start doing those steps and see where they get you and change it as it goes along. And so I love what you're saying about that. And I think it always follows a roadmap. You know, I also love the part that you say about, you know, one little element at a time, go big. And I mentioned this quite a bit. You know, I grew up in a small country, and real tiny, rural, you know, podunk actually, you know, beyond rural. There was nothing, right? But there was the local, you know, tire person that sold tires out of their house, at the local shop. I talk about that, right? But what I knew as a business, you know, from businesses being a kid, is you sold one thing, and then you sold more than one thing, and then you sold many more than one things, and you sold many. So everything was built incrementally, just like an athlete. You know, you train, then you train a little more, then you train a little more. But unfortunately, I think social media brings this in, that I'm going to do this and I'm going to be a one-hit wonder, and they take away from it the thought process, the strategy, the planning, the trying, and the fact that incrementally you achieve goals. That's how you achieve goals. You set them and you incrementally achieve them. And you have given us such insight of taking what we learned the other 2 weeks and building it around a strategy, and a strategy that has the consistency, it has the presence, it has the storytelling. We have learned so much today about just bringing it all together. So we got a couple more minutes. I want to send it back to you. Any last words you'd like to let the audience know or say, your moment here?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, just don't overthink marketing. You know, I mean, if there's 3 things in marketing you should kind of just revel on and kind of just have on your top ticker, would be your community, your web presence, and print. And then from there, break it down and how, 1, you're going to spend, 2, and how you're going to activate on those 3 things. If it's community development, okay, like I got to get active in community, I need to get involved in nonprofit, or I want to do pro bono work. You know, your web platforms, obviously your Facebook, your Instagrams, your TikToks, your Twitter, i.e., and then your print. You know, look at those 3 things, and then get into the subcategories of creativity, your audience, your present, consistency, and your storytelling. Because if you look at that as a whole, that will allow you, when you start thinking of it that way, it's allowing you to build your strategy or your roadmap for your brand. And then it's going to change, you know, especially marketing. Marketing's so agile, and understand you're going to fail.
Yeah.
How you become the best marketer is because they failed a million times, right? You know, I come from the world of guerrilla marketing. I love guerrilla marketing. Pound the pavement, pass stickers out, give everything for free. But that costs money, but your brand gets out, and it gets to be one of those things like, you know, the brands I worked for were very just core and just pounded the pavement. And I love that work ethic because nothing was handed. You know, we had to grind. We had to be at the snow events at like below 10 degrees, you know, freezing our butts off. And then back in the Arizona the week after, it's like 120 degrees. It's like, but you pound the pavement, because if you're present in the community, whoever you're trying to sell to, or being in that demographic, it's going to allow you to be able to storytell and be connected. Once you connect with them, then you sharing your story is going to be the easy part.
Yeah, very much so. I love how you state that. And, you know, I always notice this one thing. Sometimes you have entrepreneurs, business owners, and they don't feel comfortable being in front, but I have never seen anybody other than the entrepreneur be able to tell the story with the passion and involvement. Yeah. And a lot of times I tell them, okay, maybe you're not out in every single event, but you at least need to be in the front. You have to have what I always called exposure. You have to have exposure. Yeah. I walk around and say, how can I get exposed to my audience? You know, what business groups can I go to? Where can I go into blogs that talk about business? And I think that nobody can tell a story like a entrepreneur can. We've got one question that I'm going to just break down into its smallest element, because we only got a minute here. But basically, it's someone that's in the hospitality and events business for a long time, and they are wondering, any events or information, if they're a nonprofit or working with an event planner, how do they get back in front of places to offer hospitality and events?
Oh man, that's events and hospitality is everywhere. you can start at cities, you can start at parks and recs, you can start at like churches, you can start at like even partnerships, you know, because a lot of these event hospitality companies run short-staffed. I mean, you know, it's one of those things where, I mean, there's so much you can do in hospitality. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, think creatively too. Like if the bigger hospitality brands and companies are kind of consuming the whole market, how do you be creative? Like think outside of the box, you know? I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but I mean, if I sat and thought about it, you know, create events, you know, but hospitality, I mean, obviously landing a city is probably the best thing to do, but, you know, I mean, working with your country clubs, working with like schools, you know, working with the PTAs, you know, like the parent teacher associations, because they don't want to barbecue anymore. Let's just pay for it nowadays. We'll just fundraise, you know. I mean, gosh, I can go off and we can throw 20 things on the wall right now. And then, but again, when you throw the 20 things on the wall, it's so random. Like maybe you specifically work, you know, a specific audience, like the school sector, work on the school sector, or work on the art. Maybe you should collaborate with the artist that's having the same questions. Do an event with food, an event with art. Now you have a collaborative event. Now it's thinking outside the box and blowing people's minds. You invite your friends. We're having art. We're having food, and you know it's like that, right? Like creatively, like thinking outside of. Right now we have it. There's your first event. Call the artist.
And you're in the chat. Connect. You know, that is a perfect way to end this. You know, thank you so much. This has been enlightening. It's practical. It's application they can do right away. And guys, like I said at the beginning, Ariel is a wonderful advisor at the SBDC. So you guys have the contact to Lauren. You've got his contact. You know, like he said, I can throw a bunch of things against the wall. You've got additional questions unique to your company. You want to brainstorm. You could see how I'm putting him on the spot. He's brainstorming like crazy, guys. Can you imagine what it would be like with a one-on-one with this guy? So anyway, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. This has been so informative. It's been awesome. Sadie, I'm going to bring you back. There you are. Ariel and I. Oh, look at, we got a dog in the background there too. See?
Dogs everywhere. We love dogs.
We love animals on this show. We love entrepreneurs. We love animals. We love profitability, and we love marketing strategies. Yay! And oh, you know, Sadie, we had a dance happening the last time, I think, and we're going to have our dance.
What? I mean, it's the double round, and we're like,
wasn't
that raise the roof?
Yes, learn a lot. Okay, Ariel, thank you. Sadie, I'm turning it back to you.
Thank you.
High fives. Oh, I'm very excited because I get to say hello and goodbye to you guys. I'm like, I learned a lot, especially with this whole entire elevator pitch or constantly selling, brainstorming. I'm like, yes, that's what we're doing. So what I'm going to do right now is, because Lauren left us some very good information, I'm going to leave the info right over here that she left for us. So we can say, okay, what are we gonna do? We have questions for next week, right? Because we're always moving and shaking, we're doing things. So if you look in the chat window, if you want to have some questions, because I saw some ones right at the end coming in there. So what we're gonna do is, okay, Lori, you're brilliant. You have lots of shares, and we're going to say, okay, for next week, can we talk about this topic? If you look over in the chat, that is where you're going to click over and submit for next week. If you want to check out our YouTube channel, there it is. If you want to connect with, I mean, I really do feel like Ed McMahon. I'm just like, I'm a, hey-oh.
Bye, everybody. I'll see you next week. Bye, Ariel.
So, yeah, so you can tell Lori, we love her, we love Ariel. So what we're gonna do, if you want to talk to Lori some more, connect with her directly, you have her email. Okay, well, Lori, you're gonna email Lauren for her, and you see Lauren's email address in there is the L Simpson, and she is gonna set you up with an appointment with Lori. If you aren't an SBDC client, you are gonna sign up at the URL right over there. Oh my God, guys, I know, Heather, right? This is so, inspiring, but this is what we do over here at the SBDC. We are just here to help small businesses. We're here to motivate you, guide you, share information with you. So yes, please email, please contact us. We are literally your tax dollars here at work for you. So sign up, contact us. Other than that, have a fabulous day, and we will see you next week. Talk to you soon. Bye.